Welcome to First and Future. I'm Leslie Boney with the Institute for Emerging Issues at NC State University, and each week on this program we try to find somebody who is thinking about the future of our state, who is shaping where we are going, where we're heading, and how we're going to get there. And this week we are lucky to have with us Travis Mitchell, who's the Senior Director and Chief Content Officer for UNC-TV Public Media NC. Travis, thanks for being here.
Leslie, thanks for having me.
Let me just do a lightning tour through your bio, and then we'll try to figure out when you rested during the last 30 years. You're the former CEO of the NBC network, sometimes known as the Black Family Channel. You've been the managing director for 4 different magazines, the U.S. Black Engineer, Hispanic Engineer, Black Professional, and Hispanic Professional. You've been head of the community schools in Wake County. You're a graduate of Enloe in Raleigh, Morgan State in Baltimore, University of Pennsylvania with a master's in entrepreneurship and a certificate from the Kennedy School at Harvard.
That's correct.
And on the 7th day you rested.
On the 7th day I rested. Oh, you're so kind. But I would like to make one correction. I wasn't the CEO of the NBC network. I was the Chief Operating Officer, so I was the COO.
COO.
Yes.
Yes. I got to get my vowels straight.
Just meant I had 7 hats that I wore. That's all, and put out fires every day.
So you grew up in North Carolina. You went away for school, ran magazines, TV networks, a nonprofit. Now you're back here in public media in North Carolina. I'm wondering what you learned from your time outside of North Carolina.
Honestly, I learned that I miss North Carolina. You know, I don't know if I should, if it's appropriate to attribute this to Charles Kuralt or not. It just seems great because he was such a great man. But somewhere along the lines he said that nothing could be finer than to be in Carolina. And I don't care if I was in Georgia or if I were in Maryland, Washington, D.C., and those are some great places. My heart longed for the Tar Heel State. So what I learned most is how great this state is and how I was looking forward to have the opportunity to come back and serve the people of North Carolina, starting with my own backyard, Wake County, but certainly this has afforded me, the current post, the opportunity to serve the people across the state.
Let's talk a little bit about public media in North Carolina, UNC-TV, because some people know one part of it, other people know another part. You know, it depends on maybe what age you are.
That's right.
As to what parts you see, but you've got 4 different channels that are putting content out there into people's lives. Can you describe the differences between them? So
what most people are familiar with is our broadcast channel, which is also fully distributed on cable and satellite, UNC-TV. It is 65 plus years old, started by William Friday, the late great William Friday, and most people grew up with it in the day and age where we only had 4 channels. You had ABC, CBS, NBC, and then PBS, and the PBS station here, whatever the number was, is what you identified with. In Wake County and in Raleigh, it was, and in this triangle area, it was Channel 4. But along with the main channel, PBS, where people grew up watching Lawrence Welk Show and watching Sesame Street or watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, you also have some North Carolina-based cable channels. The North Carolina Channel, all things public affairs, North Carolina. You have UNC-X or Explorer, which is a destination channel which takes people to exotic places around the world, but also covers interesting places to visit within North Carolina, and also North Carolinians who are traveling abroad doing interesting things. And then, of course, you have our rural channel, which is our kids channel, for kids as early as infants to more than likely around age 8, 3rd grade, before they lose interest. But then you have Kids for Life. So once you get the Barney song in your head, and once you get Sesame Street and Big Bird in your head, you can't shake it. So you have parents who are watching public television, educational television with their children, and that's a pretty full suite of channels. And why I thought that North Carolina has in its public media network an asset that many states do not have.
That's a lot of different content to play with, and on some level you're charged with figuring out a balance. And historically, when people think about a broadcast channel that hits people all throughout a state or a country, they think about trying to figure out how to serve all those people at the same time, and yet part of what you're doing is also trying to localize this channel. So there's a statewide signal, but you're also trying to bring it home closer to people. How are you balancing that? And tell me how that works.
Well, I think one of the things I've shared nationally with PBS Network, also the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which raises money for PBS affiliates, I don't think we're in the media business. I think we're in the people business. And if you understand that we're in the people business, then it's important that they feel that the content that they consume impacts their lives. And so we launched a campaign called CARES, Public Media North Carolina CARES, connecting audiences with resources through education and service. See, only in America could a kid who was at his grandmother's house while my mother was going back to get her master's degree, 2 master's degree, and make a better life for herself and for her son, her only son, after she and my father divorced. Only in America could a kid who learned how to read watching Sesame Street and PBS become the chief content officer of the 3rd largest statewide public media entity or network, broadcast network in the country. And so I thought it was important for me to be authentic and true to the spirit and the mission of public media. There's a little boy, a little girl somewhere, Leslie, around the state who, after school, come home. They may call her Mima, Mama, Grandma, but they're at their grandmother's house, and their mother or father is trying to make a better life for them. And so I want to make sure that they know that the content on any one of our platforms is there for them, just like it was for me. And so beyond, in business, you measure the value of a business by customer lifetime value or lifetime customer value, however you want to order the words there for your acronym, but it's how loyal are people over the course of their lifetime. I think public media has the opportunity nationally and in North Carolina to really leverage the lifetime customer value. Once kids find PBS as a destination like me, they should never leave. So our challenge is developing authentic content that reflects their local communities, that connects them with resources that are around them, that connects them with people and places and initiatives that can improve their quality of life, make it very easy in a customizable manner for them to engage in that content so that they never leave the platform. We can't be all things to all people, but we certainly can serve them up with a menu that is a healthy selection of content choices that will motivate, inspire, entertain, and educate. And if we can accomplish that goal, to be a valuable and indispensable service to all North Carolinians, no matter what age they're in, then I think we will have gone a long way in fulfilling the vision that William Friday had over 65 years ago.
There's an old saw about public broadcasting that says it's for those under 6 and over 60. How are you trying to find that middle demographic that maybe historically hasn't watched at the same levels?
Well, fundamental to the business and the programming model of PBS is the fact that national programming has really been the bread and butter of the business model. So the donors, the fundraising is all built around what you may see nationally. I think we have to reverse that somewhat, and I think we have to reflect more of the local content that's available in North Carolina. And if we, through partnerships, whether it be in public affairs, informing the public, whether it be in education, which most people don't know about the educational services we provide, if we're able to form partnerships that really strengthen the value proposition and improve the quality of life for North Carolinians, I think then that in-between group, those who are 7 then to 59, will see that there's a reason why they come to public media, and it's to find the information they can't find elsewhere about positive solutions in their community to real problems.
Let's talk about that. There are about 12 things you mentioned that I want to talk some more about, but let's just maybe play out what you did earlier this year in Hickory and Catawba County. How does that fit into what you just said?
So really the unscientific approach was that I just thought coming into this position as Chief Content Officer, we needed to get around the state to really listen to people. In the content value chain, typically it starts with create, then aggregate, then distribute. I think that the first area that is most important is to listen. You listen to your viewers and then you produce what they are demanding. You don't produce and then market and hope they watch. If you're going to be of service, and I believe public media, the airwaves belong to the people of the state, they're truly our bosses, so you have to listen. And so we thought, where could we go and listen and engage a community? And Hickory and Catawba County was an area that many of our Board of Trustees members said, you're neglecting, you should get to that corner of the state. I was on the board for 4 years, and I was aware that there was a disparity between how much coverage was given to major metropolitan areas and the Triangle and the Triad, and not as much given to places like Catawba County. We go into Catawba County, and the first thing we wanted to do was talk to community stakeholders. What are the issues here that we can help with? And they thought that covering their commitment to early childhood education was the most important thing that we could help them with. And they said it to us in a way that we could understand. Catawba County was besieged by a huge opioid epidemic. And when the stakeholders in the community and the leaders kind of looked under the hood to see what were the root causes of this epidemic, it was because people were out of work due to the downturn in the furniture market. They had lost hope, and they were beginning to abuse opioids. And they thought that here now the economy is coming back with new jobs, new high-tech manufacturing jobs, new data centers, but you have an unskilled labor force that is finding it very difficult to enter back into the workforce. So long term, they thought, well, perhaps if we invest in early childhood education, maybe not that we are neglecting a generation that has been besieged by the opioid epidemic, but maybe we can prevent the next generation from abusing opioids or other substances by making sure that they're gainfully employed in the new economy. And so we started with the most important issue that they thought would help them produce systemic change, which was early childhood education. We deployed our convening assets, our production capabilities to do a summit and then to broadcast it via live stream. And then we began to get a little creative. And one of my favorite shows on network television was Extreme Home Makeover. And I used to love it. You see these stories of families who really needed a makeover, and they were doing it for these reasons that were very touching and would benefit family and community. And I said, we could do the same thing. If we take all of our shows, all of our original shows, and beyond the summit, let's convene on a market. And let's tell the story of what the market is doing through our various shows so that people across the state can see that there's a different narrative than sometimes the sensational news lines or headlines that are in the newspapers or on commercial television. And once we began to do that, we found that, there are a lot of storylines of hope here. So beyond our visiting with our producers and our production team and doing a live broadcast, maybe we should do a film and show how these storylines are both converging and diverging at the same time. And let's see if we can cover this for about 8 months, what the end product will be. And so we just aired our first feature documentary film about a local community called Catawbans. And we think that it does an excellent job explaining Catawba County's resurgence, which many people across the state did not know that it had rebounded, the resiliency of the people and the true character of the community. And we hope to model that with our CARES campaign across the state and other communities.
It's almost like every big issue facing North Carolina is facing Catawba County, and it's right in the middle of them. So this need to build for the future, the challenge of opioids and the epidemic that's there, the need to retrain a manufacturing workforce that used to make furniture or other things, High Point, Hickory migrated toward fiber optics for a while, and that didn't last as long. And so it's also a message about the need to continually reinvent yourself.
Absolutely. I would call it adaptive capacity. And as long as you have people that are willing to embrace innovation and change, but they have the necessary skill sets to do so, a community can remain vibrant and can stay ahead of the trends.
Yeah. It's so how do you then distribute that? There's traditionally you would just do a broadcast of the day, but you're now distributing that on a variety of platforms. Talk about that.
Well, I like to use analogies or terminology that I think makes sense with everyday folks. And so we have in our programming concept, or our content concept, there are 3 ways we like to distribute content. One, we call it story threads. And when you are creating a suit or a garment, it all starts with one thread. And you have to weave that thread together with other lines of thread, which it becomes a storyline. And then from there you do stories. So the story thread is social media, simply asking a question. What is happening in your community? Tell us about your problems, engaging people in conversation that can be virile. Then, once we begin to hear back from different diverse voices in the community, and that's very, very important because the diversity of a community makes up the tapestry of its heart. And so, as we're able to piece together, if you will, these stories, we're able to develop storylines. What are the emerging stories coming out of a community? And we use that for what we call short form interstitial content, whether it be 3 to 5 minute pieces or 90-second pieces that we distribute on air and also on our website and social media. And then all of that bubbles up to a longer form 30-minute or an hour program or a summit where we're able to now, with a captive audience, pull in those people that may have engaged with the content on social media or on our website or online, and then have really a true representative conversation of the diversity of opinions and thoughts. And so that's kind of our strategy to make sure that we connect to the heart of people using authentic storytelling.
So traditional measure for broadcast mediums is ratings. And yet you're talking about changing people's lives or things like that, and that's not going to show up in a rating anywhere.
But it will show up in terms of how people consume, because people don't want to, you're not going to first of all eat something that doesn't taste good. It may be healthy, but even we know if it's healthy and it doesn't taste good, chances of you eating it is not very good. So if my wife listens to the podcast or sees the podcast, then you'll understand why I prefer steak sometimes over my greens. But at any rate, the greens are tasty, but I just prefer the steak. But the bottom line is the challenge we have is we got to give people things that are good for them and also entertain them. Now, here are the results, Leslie. In Catawba County, we just finished 8 months of engagement. The latest data that we looked at this morning indicated that we got people to engage with that content. About 2.1 million impressions were delivered. That means that they looked at it, they liked it, they downloaded, they shared it, and the ratings in and of themselves are probably about 100,000 who watched across North Carolina at any given time a portion of the Catawbans film. But to reach 2.1 million impressions means that people like what we're doing. And more so, they're enjoying it to share with other people. And I think that is the new business model for public media in the future. Provide people with substance that's good for them, yet entertaining. The entertainment is really through true life reality television, because the issues that we're dealing with are unfolding before our eyes. This is not made for television stuff. This is real people dealing with real problems, needing real solutions. So if we can serve that up, people will digest it in an increasing fashion, which they're doing, and it's helping us get traction in areas that we never had traction before.
The approach you're taking is very similar to the approach the Institute for Emerging Issues is taking, in that traditionally we decided what the content was, and then we figured people would go along with the content. In this case, we started in a similar way to you. We started by listening to what people thought the content should be, and then we brought them the content that they said they wanted. It's an interesting challenge to meet, just because you don't know necessarily whether that's going to work. I mean, it's a really new approach that you're taking.
It's a risk, but if you're going to fail, fail forward. And so, to me, doing more of the same and playing it safe just was not good enough. You know, I have a mentor that says, when best is available, better is not good enough. And I have another, my mother said it this way: good, better, best, never let it rest till your good is better, your better is best. If you're going to try to achieve excellence, it's going to require you to get out of the box and try new things. I believe it was Einstein, maybe it's attributed to Einstein, or at least I heard it this way, but insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. So we had a pattern for over about 10, 15 years of doing things one way. I thought it was important to, if I'm going to really be a change agent, to upset the apple cart and try something new from day one.
Talk a little bit about attention spans. Everybody says those are getting shorter, and that media needs to adjust to that. What have you found about that? To what extent is that true, and to what extent is it more nuanced than that?
Well, I believe in general we're in a microwave generation. You know, we don't wait for well-prepared meals. We want to get instant gratification, drive-through, etc. I find it very interesting coming off Thanksgiving weekend. The one thing that we will do is we will sit down and we will enjoy a meal, we will enjoy company, and we will watch a very good football game on Thanksgiving. Now, why do I say that? Even the non-sports fan, because it's the camaraderie, it's the atmosphere. So what I think media's challenge is, it's not that people have shorter attention spans. I believe they have a lot more choices. And I think your challenge is to be able to carve out what you want them to pay attention to. And when you have a captive audience, you had better serve them well. So if there are folks who are at the serving line at grandma's house and they cut the turkey, if the turkey is well seasoned and it's juicy, you know, they're going to get a healthy portion. If you stand behind them, you may lose out. But if the turkey was dry and it wasn't very good and it wasn't very tasty, you don't have to worry about it. They're going to cut it very small just so that they can show grandma they had a little piece of the turkey and don't want to offend grandma, and so you can get your helpings if you come behind them. Television is the same way. When you get people's attention, if you really want to make sure that they carve out a lot of time, you had better make sure that you're sensitive to what they need and you offer it up to them in a way they can digest it.
And one thing we know they like is stories about people. And if there's a mistake we used to make as an organization, it was assuming that everybody would be fascinated to the same degree we were about data. And one of the flips we're trying to make now is to telling stories about people.
Yes, I mean, data is good, but people bring the KPIs to life. So whatever the performance metric is, or performance metrics are, whatever the data indicates, it's through people. We've talked about this before. Policies are created to have an impact on people and communities. When we're able to show exactly how policies implemented, how they impact lives, people from different communities are curious because they're facing the same things in their own backyards.
A couple of questions as we wrap up. First, what's the biggest issue you think facing North Carolina right now?
As a state, I think the biggest issue facing North Carolina is, will we continue to be a state that comes together despite what issues could possibly pull us apart? North Carolina has been at the center, whether it's the civil rights struggle or whether it is industries that have come back, labor rights, etc. North Carolina has found a way to be an innovative leader by bringing people together. My late uncle, Senator Vernon Malone, was known as a Democratic leader, but what he was most known for is when the school board in Raleigh had to come up with a way to keep the community together, and they created a diversity plan to merge the county and the city schools, or the black schools and the white schools, to say it more directly. Each community had to give up something. And I'm so proud of his legacy because he was able to form a coalition of people, bipartisan coalition, a multiracial coalition of people who just believed that this was right for Wake County. I think that is the state's legacy. And I think if we're able to live up to the legacy and follow in the footsteps of trailblazers that have made North Carolina the great state that it is, I think then we have a prosperous future. If we regress and digress into our own political corners, if we don't come out of those places of indifference, then I think the state will be challenged to meet and achieve its greatest destination.
And that requires not a gloss, but an honest conversation.
An honest conversation.
Who's somebody we don't know that 20 years from now is going to be doing something amazing?
So I thought about this a lot, and instead of naming an individual, I'm going to name a brand. There is a community-based organization run by millennials in Durham called Scallywag Magazine. It is a non-profit, issues-oriented investigative journalism publication distributed throughout the South about real stories of real problems and people who are doing something about it. I have been fascinated by the young people that are committed to change, and my hope that I see in the lives of and the careers of and the hopes and aspirations of millennials and digital natives is that they are concerned about their community, they are concerned about their nation, and they're concerned about this world. So as jaded as I may become as a Generation Xer, or as cynical as I can become, I find hope in the young people of tomorrow, and I think Scallywag Magazine is on the cutting edge of being able to manifest the aspirational hopes and desires of a generation.
Travis Mitchell, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Travis Mitchell is the Chief Content Officer and Senior Director for the UNC-TV Public Media in North Carolina. Travis, thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Leslie.
I'm Leslie Boney for the Institute for Emerging Issues. We'll see you in the future.